I'm thrilled Victoria got us connected. Tell me more about yourself.
So I've been in education by 21 years now. I started out as a teacher and then just really got involved in like who's making the decisions around here. I got nosy, and that's really what brought me into leadership. And just from there, it was pretty much, I worked as a AP, a principal, assistant director, director. Now I'm assistant superintendent. So, I have a son. Ben, he's graduating, and it's a little story about him. He really struggled with school. He had a lot of friends, but he hated school. So the change in the way we're going with New York State is phenomenal because he's the type of kid that would have loved, experience-based learning. And so I'm super excited where we're going with all of this.
I mean, you and your office is at the heart of it for New York State,
Yes.
so it should
Oh
be
yeah, Jonah.
very
We're
exciting.
super happy to have, him at the center of it, and just, visionary is really important, and the kids at the center. So yeah, I'm here. I have 3 schools right now. Most of the kids have IEPs, so we're special education, and we have some regular general education for our therapeutic programs. And we are whole brain, whole child. So basically, the model really is at the heart of it is we educate the whole being. And so we have our teachers, CAs, aides, OT, PT, speech, all of them that come around 2 main learning experiences a year so that everybody is involved with the teaching and learning. So it's pretty phenomenal.
Tell me more about these 2 learning experiences.
So at the base of the PBL work we do, and we essentially wanted to redesign what does it mean to work at a center for kids that are, I would say, most intense needs, beautiful, passion, have every right to access everything that any human does in education. But often in special ed, it's really compliance based, and it's really about like they got to get their goals, and they're always working on something that they're really is difficult for them. And there's a history in special ed that carries a culture in your own schools. And one of the things I'd like to lift up that many schools try to do inclusivity, but the truth is there's a bias. When you go into a school, you'll know the culture of the school by how are the special ed students, teachers, and staff treated.
Mhm.
And really, I wanted to work with my teams to create beautiful spaces because our kids, they don't have the option to come here. It's not like I want to go to CTE for electrician. They are literally, they're basically, they don't fit in their community. And oftentimes, I'm not saying schools are doing things wrong. They just don't have the resources or the programs to fit their needs. So in a sense, they're out of their community, and they come to us, and we love having them. And our staff are really just centered around, we want them to feel passionate, and we want them to feel purpose first. Not, here's your IEP, we're going to drive with this IEP. So it's been 8 years I've been here, and I'm seeing a shift from, okay, behavior discussion to teaching and learning, which is huge.
That's massive. I mean, like, where does it start? How do you get the butts in seats ultimately? But
Yep,
give them the best experience possible.
absolutely.
And I'll tell you, I have a special place in my heart for your role. My mom was a IEP special education teacher for 30 plus years downstate in New York. But just like, yeah, it's providing every child with an experience of why are we actually here today? Like, why are we in school? What does it look like? I did a little homework on you. And so when you were early admin, you had this hybrid experience that I am very interested to hear more about, the distance learning and in-person learning. That's a lot of my background as well. And leading into thinkering, and I'll tell you all that good stuff too. But on our end, the opportunity was always like, why are we bound by these 4 walls? And how do we extend classroom to community, which I spoke to Jonah about as well. And I think, that's one of the hardest things that schools have challenges with for some reason. I'm not sure why. Every school right now is talking about career pathways and portrait of a graduate in New York, especially, right? But how do we connect them to these real human experiences and get that opportunity? And we have the best opportunities just in our own community. You don't have to
Yes,
connect across
absolutely.
the country. Obviously the technology expedites it, but how do we just have that human touch? I'm dying to hear about, what that experience was like, and then more so how you're applying it today.
All right, so are you talking about when I was, I think you're talking about Kingston High School, where
Yeah.
we had distance learning and there was a hybrid model.
Mhm.
So when I was in my internship, when I was doing my administration, I was afforded the opportunity to really drive something that was needed. Sometimes you have internships and then you just kind of go about okay, I'm getting these hours. But I was asked to really look at, actually, we went for a grant, and this is what this started. And it was really trying to look at getting more kids that needed credits to graduate. So that's where the base started. And what were the programs? This one happened to be Apex. It's just one of the tools that are distance learning. And this was before COVID. So before we had like all virtual for that year and a half or so. And then it just kind of took a life of its own. But what happened was we worked with the company, and what the hybrid about it was that we weren't wanting to just say, okay, kids, get on and do these, similar to a worksheet, really. Like here, read about something, you can look at a few videos and then answer questions. So what we did, because we had special ed students and we had, L students, EL students also, we decided to do a portfolio and have the Apex with it. So that's the distance learning. We had teachers that were involved and got trained up, and so they were the teacher of record. And so they had it basically looked like they had a night each night. It was night school. Had ELA, then math and science and social studies. And then we had coaching areas where you could come in for the lab and that type of thing. But I think what I took away from it, because I was there the first year and developed it with a team, I took away with it that these kids that were really struggling, and often they were kids that weren't engaged in school, same type of thing. So how do we get them there, but also help them to get through, because some of them would not get through just the actual platform of virtual. So we designed, like, what do they need? So we had individualized pathway with that. And so if they needed X, Y, and Z and they needed to supplement it, that's what we did. So we may have, it's really what some schools do as a portfolio. So we had items that they had to work on and mastery of that, and just to really demonstrate that they understood that skill. And it wasn't just content. And I think that is really where we're trying to go now with education. It's not content first, understand this, and then, take a test, and you hope that they apply it to the real world or other areas. It's what I love that we're going, and I love it for my students, is that it's like experience is the new standard. So you build experiences, and it doesn't have to be siloed any longer. ELA over here, and math and social studies and science. You're actually building experiences, and then you're designing into that, which is amazing. And I think it's going to be a mind shift. You're going to have to certainly try to understand, well, what does this even look like? Because for so long, it's really, here's your content. You hope that kids can read and write and understand and comprehend, and then be able to apply that to a test, mostly, unless you're a really good teacher and they're out there, and some good programs that looked at it differently. But public education has been that way, as you know. So moving forward to where I'm at now, how that has impacted me is, even though I was an assistant principal then, it was clear that special ed students had a hard time even with that program and accessing credit in that linear path. So my travel through since then, I was an AP. I worked at Red Hook Central School District. I was a principal there. So my lens wasn't just special ed, even though I'm a leader of schools right now. My schools right now happen to be 95% special ed students with IEPs, but they have passion, and they have, they need to have experiences. And our teachers are awesome, because they really want them to be able to access what any other child can access. And that doesn't always happen. It just doesn't. So the whole brain, whole child PBL model, which is a deeper learning model, really what it is, there's one semester, one half the year, and then there's another one that anchors at the second half of the year. And so we have 2 phases. We have our staff come together for a full month, and all of our staff, not just teachers. So it's not just teachers, it's anchored with the teachers, but our OT, PT, speech, TAs, aides, and social workers come together to do empathy interviews. They work with the kids. They look at, and we have tools for all this. So they look at, where are we at and what are we going to be doing in this segment of time? And let's go and talk to the children. What do they want to do? What are they passionate about? Then they build an experience that allows for not just, it's not just a saying, whole brain, whole child. They're the experts. They understand OT, fine motor, and PT, large motor skills, and they understand, cognitive ability with the social workers and SEL. So they design around these children, and those children in that classroom, it could be 8 children, because we have 8 1-2s and 6 1-2s, so it's a different ratio than your regular general ed classroom. But they do a deep dive into, like, what could this look like? for a multi-sensory experience with nature, with the arts, and with the PBL Core 4, which is a signature experience, and iteration and teaching and learning, and then tuning and reflecting, and then celebrating, and it's pretty phenomenal.
There's a lot to unpack there on that
I
side.
know and I
One,
talk very fast, so I so
listen, we're New Yorkers on this call, right? So I get it completely. So where are you from originally?
I'm right here in Kingston.
Yeah. I'm a downstate guy, but the speed travels throughout the state
Yeah,
completely on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
A few things. One, you highlighted teachers as the anchor, but everyone's coming in. That's the culture side. All right. That is by far the biggest missing piece of why some buildings are flourishing and why some are drowning. And you see it. So the teachers that are leaving buildings every single year, they're amazing. But what am I doing here at the end of the day? Let me ask you something, because it's a big question, and we're in a lot of these conversations, not only in New York State. New York State's pushing right now because I still find people are curious about Civic Seal. They don't know what it is, right? It's been out for a few years. Portrait of a Graduate's coming now. Everyone's trying to wrap their arms around it. But this Portrait of a Graduate is taking place in states for the last 20 years at this point in certain places. The biggest challenge that we see on it, speaking with educators, superintendents, you name it, is how do I assess this? Right?
Measurement.
It's not black and white.
Yeah,
Test is easy to assess. You wrote C and it's D. All right, wrong, right?
right.
What does it look like, especially with smaller class sizes and built-in IEPs on this? Like,
Yeah.
what has that process been like?
The measurement piece is going to be the interesting piece, and the equity piece of that measurement. And so that's going to be us really as a team diving in, and what does that really look like? What are the best practices out there? With the default for special ed is they're looking at skills, they're looking at IEP goals. And I'm not saying we have to reinvent the IEP. That's a whole nother discussion, and the way we look at neuroaffirming practices and what are these goals anyhow. But I think it's got to be individualized. We have to understand there's got to be some type of criteria for measurement. But we're going to have to get really creative on what does it mean for a child to have, yes, there's standards, but how do I know that they've mastered this skill for their capacity and they're challenging and growing? And how does the CRSE framework support this? Because that's going to be at the core of our work, because equity in assessment is a whole area of the CRSE framework. So I don't have the answer to that all, but I think it's going to be this summer. We're starting a boot camp with our teachers, and some of the work we're going to be doing is really looking at, let me back up. We're opening a deeper learning lab school. It's going to be a campus. It's a middle school and a high school. And it's going to be driven by experiences, similar to the Career Tech Center, not opening a Career Tech Center, but we're going to have labs, and there's going to be culinary arts and some type of makers and creators and such. We're going to be designing that this summer with our teachers. So we not only have to crosswalk the Portrait of a Graduate, how do you measure those soft skills with, creative innovator? What does that mean? What are those experiences, and how do you know that all of our children are going to get equal access to those? And then how do you measure it? So these lab schools are going to give us the opportunity, working with Dr. Shanker and myself and the team, to really crosswalk what you're talking about, to step back and do some prototyping around, okay, we have Portrait of a Graduate. We're going to lead with experience. So you have hubs, you also have PBL cycles, and then you have explicit teaching and learning. So where do you step back and look at this child is going through 9th grade? What does that look like? What are all the experiences they're going to get? And how does everything else fall in? I see it as a formula. I do. I see it as we lead with an experience, and the formula is, okay, Tanisha's going through this, and at the end of 9th grade, they've gotten these experiences, and these are the skills they practice, and of course standards. And then, okay, so what? How do we know they learn that? And that's going to be through various. It's not going to be a test. Yes, there's place for tests, but there's going to have to be ultimately, self-directed rubrics. We're going to have to really redesign and look at best practices. And that's what we're getting involved in. We're launching that this summer, auditing what we're doing and starting those discussions.
Yeah, and I'm sure
that was really long, and I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You definitely, and I'm sure that's going to be a major topic at the Deeper Learning Conference as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's something we do as an organization where we're doing that at the teacher level right now. So the big picture mission on our side was always, okay, if we're really end goal is to help students, right? That's our North Star of how do we set every single child up for success? Exactly what you just said before. It has to start with teachers, right? It has to start with the people in the building, because we know what attrition looks like. We know what retention looks like. Burnout, it's ugly. And it's just not possible to educate these kids in the same way that we always did, right? And it always worked. So on that side, we go through of like, what's your passion? And we turn to educators all the time and say, like, if there was no red tape, what would you do? And
Yes.
it's a completely different mind shift of like, wait, what do you mean? So we bring teachers through a 10-week program on our side, all around what does humanizing education look like in your own community. The experts are there and the mentors and the peers and all that good stuff. Our first group that we did, one of the teachers says, like, where's your syllabus? And I was like, no. We have no syllabus.
Right.
If you're looking for syllabus, this is probably the wrong program for you, but it's not their fault. It's just how it's always been done. So having that little bit of a mind shift of understand, like, no, we're working backwards ultimately. We're saying
Absolutely.
we could teach you content. Content's easy. It's 2026. We could connect you with people. I think that's a little bit harder in 2026, especially for some reason if people are more isolated than ever before. But we have to work in communities. But once you're there, what's that spark? What's going to get you excited in our world? What does humanizing education look like? And then we turn around as a nonprofit and say, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Through funding, through mentorship, through research, the whole nine. But when you're talking about kids, and why I mention this is we always get the feedback of, hey guys, this is great. Can we do it with our kids now? Of course. They're like, this is what it's at. Whatever is getting that butt in the seat for them to show up, because once they're engaged, we could teach them anything under the sun. It doesn't matter. And I think that's the big disconnect just in society today. Of like, everyone thinks that kid, the 8th grade kid, goes home and doom scrolls on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, which maybe they do, maybe they don't. But there's also passion areas, and they're acquiring and applying more information from that in a very short amount of time than sitting for a week in traditional classrooms. So I think when you look at it, it's a complete different mind shift. I love how you use that.
And I like how, like, you got me thinking, like, even ourselves, like, how awesome is it when a kid gets their soul is sparked, and like, then they're in. And I think teachers, when it clicks, even with the PBL cycles, we're in our second year of fully implementing these cycles. And I'll go back to what we're doing at Deeper Learning. We have a deep dive session. But some of our teachers, when they say, oh, I don't like PBL or whatever, but once they go through the process and they're designing, they do phenomenal at it. So sometimes there's a stigma with this PBL, and I like to, often say it's the process that you're going through with adults, because they have their own scope. The adults, like I said, is phase 1, and then the implementation is phase 2. It's an 8-week, and after 2 years of this and reflecting, it's really interesting to see how it clicked, and now there's a deeper understanding in a different way, is what I'm seeing. And the other thing is, I think when teachers are allowed to dream and allowed to be designers and really truly go there, I think sky's the limit. I think it's going to be awesome. I think that when it clicks, that it's experience first, and it has with many people, but it's deep work. This doesn't just happen overnight. We are lucky at Ulster BOCES to have, definitely a superintendent that's at the lead, but we all have a little more creative space. And so that's the opportunity for me as a leader to say, okay, what are we doing together? I'm not doing this, I'm doing this with them. So we're going to be learning this together. But I do believe in shared language is important, systems, the tools, repetition. And I think that's what gets, even like with students, you want to have an experience, but that some of it has to be predictable and take away the anxiety for the teachers and all of that. So I found that the second year, we're coming to the close and celebration. We've come so far, and because we've stayed rooted in the why behind this and the authenticity of the work. And so at Deeper Learning, there's going to be a lot of leaders there. So we are going to be taking them through a deep dive, a 3-hour segment that will launch. We'll do the 4 core. We're going to do a mini PBL cycle, and they'll go through it. And we're going to be sharing 3 scopes. There's a leadership scope. We went through it ourselves, my leaders. There's 10 of us. The teacher level, and not just teachers, but your community base, and then your student level. So that's ultimately, we want them to leave with sharing an experience that they got to go through a signature experience. They got to design something. They got to tune it, reflect, work together, and then celebrate. And in the end, we're going to share tools with them to say, this is fun work. It's muddy, but when you get in this momentum, it's really the leaders really doing the work with the staff. It really is. If we weren't neck and neck with them and in it, I don't think it would go as well in any school.
Jill, I know exactly why Victoria introduced us now. Like it took us 20 minutes, but now I know exactly why, especially all the work side. So we're doing our program for the most part is virtual for 10 weeks. But what we're seeing now is districts, locations are coming back to us and saying, guys, like, how do you help us fulfill this in-person PD as well? So you're an hour better than us. We do it in 4 hours. So 3 hours sounds like a dream on that side. But what we've done, and I mean, like bringing multiple school districts together of here's your boot camp, right? In a sense of you're coming into this experience and you're all here for a reason. You all opted in to this for some way, shape, or form, or your district's putting you here because they believe you're either on the fence and need just a little bit of shove over, or you are the innovator and outlier, which we've also found is one of the most difficult positions for a teacher in a school, where they feel completely alienated these days if the rest of the staff isn't there. But walking them through this experience of what is your dream project. And I love how you said that everyone's on equal footing there, because what we then do is not only, hey, now you have your blueprint, let's make it happen. Let's not only connect you with your school community, but let's connect you with the professional community and other pockets that we could share your insight and your activity and creativity. I mean, we had someone in New York, a little bit north of you, or a little bit west of you, excuse me, where they came in and said, we want to create a school garden, and not for the traditional reasons of getting kids out there, getting their hands dirty, which is huge value in itself, but 30% of the district is Native and Indigenous. They want to honor practice and culture. They also realized there's a major food desert that is taking place locally, which is leading to health issues.
Yeah.
And they said, we believe this could be an unlock for one, nutrition, but then also entrepreneurship. Let's create a farmer's market where we can take it from school courtyard to cafeteria and community. I was like, this is incredible. This educator did it, knocked it out the park. This was over a year ago. We FaceTimed with her the other day. She has chickens running around now. Like, it's just so cool. But our project influenced someone in Colorado to do the exact same thing. And it's just looking at it, I think we're in this fork in the road, honestly. And education has been so weird over the last 5-6 years. I mean, like, bizarre. I feel like we've lived a lifetime, ultimately. Yeah. But it's connected community that it keeps coming back to of, hey, I know this person's neck and neck with me. They're not, and roles and responsibilities are going to be far and few between, and people are going to have greater roles and responsibilities, and that's fine. But this person's in it with me, and they're there to help support this project, not only get over the line, because those teachers will leave. One of them, the one in Colorado, came back recently. She's like, I saw a school garden previously, but someone in our school retired. There was a koi pond, and they came back, and there was cement over the koi pond. So it's like, how do we create sustainable programming? So it's not just, hey, that was fun. Now let's get back to this, right? What we've always done, which is never going to work, and the kids aren't going to show up anymore. So I just think, like, yeah, it's the opportunity cost right now.
And plus it's the real world experience, and they saw something bigger than themselves. We work with an adaptive design organization that allowed our kids to go through a thought process and design process for a challenge for one of our staff members that are in a wheelchair. So it's more of a service-based learning challenge, and they were our partners, and they designed the most beautiful. Our kids, it was over a few months. They designed out, well, first of all, they started with empathy interviews for the staff member, and they listened to what he wanted and needed, and then they built out this awesome piece for his wheelchair. I had cup holders, all kinds of things, and they were so happy in the end because they did this for a community member that was close with them. They did the design work. They cut all of the parts. They did everything nuts and bolts, A to Z, and they were so happy, and it was of service of somebody they loved. And now they have a prototype that others can use that are in wheelchairs. And so they've designed something that's their own prototype and their own assistive technology, really.
Which also, let's think about traditional New York State standards. That hits every single one and then some.
Yep.
I don't care what grade level, like those kids are future ready, right? What everyone's trying to wrap their arms around. Joe, I know we're getting into time on this one. I will definitely see you at the Deeper Learning Conference. We'll be there with our team. I would love, if you're open to it, to be in that room and capture some of the magic that's taking place over those 3 hours.
Absolutely. My team will be there. I'm going to open it up. We're going to be working together. I would love to see you. And I'm going to have a little podcast. So pop in if you want to do that as well. But yeah, that's awesome.
That sounds great, Joe. This was awesome. Really appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
We'll talk soon.